everyone, and thank you so much for joining in. This is Dr. Judy of Dr. Judy WTF with the Freud, and with us today is Christiana Davidson, all the way in the Caribbean, and actually the show idea was her idea, so I want to give her credit for thinking up the topic, which is the sexualization of children in narcissistic families. So, hello, Christiana. How are you?
Hello, everyone. And Dr. Judy, just to excuse the coloration on my face, I've had a skin treatment, but I didn't want to miss the show. And
Very great.
we keep it real here. We show up like we are.
Exactly. I love that about you. And
Yeah.
after all, right, at the heart of it, we want people to be authentic and love themselves for
Yes.
who they are. And
Absolutely.
right. And anyway, our topic is really about our inside
Mm.
world and how we suffer on the inside when we're treated
Yes.
without the unconditional love and the mirroring and the attunement and all of that. So the title again is Sexualization of Children in the Narcissistic Family. And I thought tonight we would keep the format a little bit different, meaning that Christiana and I will talk about it, and then maybe 20, 30 minutes in, people can call in and ask
Mm.
questions, and this will give us the opportunity to put a lot of information and thoughts and get you thinking about this topic. It certainly comes up a lot in my treatment room, as I'm sure it does in your treatment room. And
It
so,
does.
so let's get into it. So, what inspired you to think of this topic?
Well, Dr. Judy, we were thinking, weren't we? And as far as I know, we're going to make a bit of a series of
Yeah.
this about you know, narcissism and sex.
Yes.
And so when we came up with that sort of series title, my first thought was, okay, well, let's go to the first place where we are exposed to um, narcissism in the family and how that impacts us in terms of our sexual selves.
Yes.
Um, you know, because actually, if you look at the research and things like that, there's not a lot about this impact of growing up with a narcissistic parent and how it actually does influence one's own um, integration of one's sexual being.
So being
Um,
that we're doing a series on sexual impact, narcissism
yes.
and impact on sexual attitudes and behavior and
Mm.
sexual injuries specifically, we are starting at the cause. So what about
Exactly. Panel one.
panel one? How
Yeah.
is it that in particular narcissism, which I will describe my viewpoint on narcissism, is
Mhm.
a system gone wrong where parents objectify their children and put their own needs before the needs of the children. And specifically, they lack empathy. And I want to again put out to everyone that I'm working very diligently on a video that I'm going to be hopefully done writing and editing and filming and editing by next year. And it's titled Healing from Narcissistic Abuse, hosted by me. And we start with the cause. We always start with the cause. So let's look at this whole idea of narcissism, objectification, putting
Mhm.
parents' needs before children, and then all kinds of things come into play like boundaries. And so maybe share some of your thoughts around this subject.
Mhm. Sure, thank you, Dr. Judy. So if we think about it, where do we first learn about sex? And the first place we learn about it is from the environment we're in. We look to mum and dad. If you have a mother and a father figure, you're going to look to them in order to understand what it means to have intimacy between your parents, between a man and a woman,
Yeah.
generally, or the same sex, could be the same.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if one of your parents is narcissistic, let's say, for example, the father is a narcissist, we have to remember that the narcissist is developmentally, emotionally at the age of 3 to 5, but also psychosexually at the age of 3 to 5. Now, I'm referring here to Freud's psychosexual development stages. And at that stage, it's the phallic stage of psychosexual development. And that means where the child is fascinated with its genitals, with masturbation. That's the kind of the whole focus and drive of the child at that age is the phallic stage. So if we translate that then to the family, you have say a narcissistic father, he's going to be at that stage of development, so psychosexually. So his whole focus is on his genitalia, you could say.
Yeah.
And this can translate into things like, for example, you might get a father who is, you know, who likes to walk around naked, or who is leaving pornographic magazines around, or is
Videos.
has smutty pictures on the wall, or tells lots of dirty jokes. And that's the kind of sense that may come across if he is a more somatic narcissist, because you know that there are two different types, broadly speaking, of narcissists: the somatic, which is focused on the body as a source of supply, and then the cerebral, who is the intellectual one, who kind of almost diminishes and demeans sexuality as something beneath them, in place of the intellect. So when you have this sort of more of a somatic narcissist, they're going to be very much sort of strutting their stuff like a bit of a peacock in the home. And this, you know, for a child, it's uncomfortable. Naturally, it's uncomfortable because the child is looking to the parent as a role model, and they're seeing, you know, say, daddy being very sexually unboundaried in this sense, not really protecting them. In fact, in many ways, exposing them to his own sexuality. And this has an impact on the child themselves, because there can be a bit of a sense of shame that comes in naturally about this, because they feel that something's off a bit.
So you brought up stages of development, and so
Yes.
injuries from a mind map perspective, and not only a mind map perspective, a psychoanalytic perspective, injuries will stunt development. Okay, someone, Christiana's talking about, well, he's stuck in the phallic stage, or he's only mature till age 3 to 5. That really means that developmentally, emotionally, they're stuck there. And why are they stuck there? Going back to the cause, which people who have watched my videos know that I'm very focused on. The cause is because it's multi-generational. So it's not like the father just learned this and pulled this out of the air. His father, his mother, multi-generations of people have been inappropriate, boundary violating. And so this is what is the manifestation of that. And then it trickles down to the children, and they get sexualized. I want to kind of steer it in the direction of objectification, okay? Because behind all of this, like, let's look at what is narcissism. They like to appear looking great. They love to look great, okay? And so if they love to look great, then an extension of themselves, extension is their children. So if they have good-looking children, if they're looking great, if everything on the outside is looking wonderful, then the objectification, which is, in my opinion, a defense mechanism against the underlying lackings, the lack of self-esteem, the lack of really feeling great. I'm just writing about this in my my video script about how it's a
which
house.
is really great, by the way.
Thank you. And thank you, Christiana, for giving me feedback. I'm taking it super seriously. I want it to be really, really thorough, and so that
Fantastic.
people truly learn the nuances. But this objectification, so the child is not a child permitted to separate and individuate, which children do at a certain point, meaning they grow up, they get their own life, they have their own thoughts and opinions, they make their own choices. In the narcissistic family system, that's not really the case. The pull is for them to stay glued to the family system, to keep supplying the goodies to the parents, and to keep looking good. So the whole house of cards will be nice and shiny on the outside. It's just that there's not much there on the inside. And that's why we call narcissism the fake self, or the feeling of nothingness behind the mask. You know, the mask. What's a mask? It's a mask. There's nothing really behind the mask. And so all they have are their props and toys to show up and show off. And so what if the children are their props and toys? Look at my little girl. She's so beautiful. Look at my son. Wow, look at those ripples on his body. Look at my daughter. Look how tall she is. Look what a body. I mean, these are things that will send messages to the children. And if you look at panel 3, I'll just bring up core beliefs. What do you think these core beliefs are going to register as in the children?
What would the negative core beliefs be?
If the children are soaking up all of this, oh, I'm hot, oh, I'm beautiful, oh, daddy loves me, mommy loves me because I'm special and I'm beautiful and I'm perfect, or not, or my ears are too big, I'm too fat, I'm too skinny, I don't fit the mold, I don't dress like they want me to dress. So it could have the opposite too, right? So what do you think the core beliefs would land as in the inner world of the child?
Well, it's, it could be that, I'm only worthy if I'm looking perfect. So there'd be a strong perfectionism drive, a real sense of, I'm not worth knowing for anything deeper than the physical. I'm just an object and my whole sense of gaining love and being seen is through how I look and what reaction I can garner of admiration from others. Exactly. And I have to hold on to that with all my life, because if that goes, I'm left with nothing. I have no worth. I have no value.
Exactly. So I know we had a discussion before about this, and please feel free to share and bring in your thoughts about the subject.
Thank you.
Very interesting.
Well, Dr. Judy, talking about this objectification, as you brought up there, it's the crux of it in many ways, because if we do sort of just briefly go back to how the child views the sexual relationship or the intimate relationship between mother and father, the narcissistic person objectifies everyone. So he objectifies, if we're talking about the father, he objectifies the mother, the wife. She is an object to him, and he has to make her an object because he doesn't do intimacy. He doesn't do the kind of heart-to-heart emotional bonding, the into me you see thing.
Into me and see nothing, because I look at it as
there is a.
I really do. I look at it as a missing chip. Okay, and lately I've been talking about it metaphorically in my treatment room. I'll give you an example of what I mean. So if you're missing an empathy chip, correct? Truly missing it. It's not like you're trying to do some kind, you're just not feeling into me. You're not seeing into me. Why does that happen? Either you haven't been taught intimacy because you also have been objectified, not you, but I'm talking in general. Okay, the objectification has occurred, so you haven't had the experience of it, or something went radically wrong to the point where you had to cut your heart out, numb your feelings, cut out feelings, and do a different game of life called manipulation and control versus love and intimacy, which I did a YouTube episode on. So check it out, everyone. Manipulation and control versus love and intimacy. It's a different game. So one is that surface game. You're beautiful, you're great, I get to show you off, you get to be a piece of my self-esteem. And the other one is being a human being. Okay, so one is an objectification of humanity, and the other one is a connection to humanity. Okay, and they're
that's
different.
That's exactly what you're describing there, is that psychosexual stage of development, because what ultimately that developmental sort of level system is moving towards is the integration of the sexuality and the identity and the whole
and the
human
emotions
being.
And the connection. Okay, so in an ideal sense, what is sexuality? Sexuality is a pathway to emotional, physical, mind, body, soul connection. Okay,
yes.
And so if
you've got someone at the 3 to 5 year old phallic stage,
right,
that can't happen. It's going to be more of an objectification of somebody to be used in a sense as a self-gratifying object,
right,
rather than a mutual.
So there's no role, exactly. There's no role modeling for an intimate emotional connection, and so
it also will have an effect, this, on the wife, on the mother of the children. You see, the father may be this sort of openly sexual, unboundaried presence, but the mother may carry some shame about this objectification that she is experiencing, and that too the children may pick up on.
Right.
So there can be a message from both parents that it's something that's just not healthy, it's something that's not good, it's something that's not life-giving.
So out of this system gone wrong, as I like to call it, because psychopathology to me is a system gone wrong. So in this system gone wrong, you bring in mother, or we can also reverse it, because we always pick on the guy, pick on the woman. So, it could be the mother that's sexual,
could be,
and histrionic and displaying these grandiose gestures of sexuality and narcissism and so on. And so that too is another example of lack of integration. So what is a healthy human psyche is an integrated human psyche. It's not split off into sex and then another split into some other aspects of life. It's supposed to come together, again, mind, body, soul, the sexuality. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is that when children are exposed to sexual impulses that are too early for them to process, if there's inappropriate touching or inappropriate visual stimulation, then children get turned on. They do. Okay. And that's natural and normal. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that these turn-ons can start to glue, or rather, let's call it pair with. Okay. They pair with, they lock into images, they lock into sensations, and so on. And so I say over and over again that narcissistic families, parents steal their children's feelings. And this time we're talking about how they steal their children's sexuality. So they do. Right? They lock in the vision of themselves in their children's minds And so the children are then
Yes.
not free. Again, they're prisoners. They're prisoners.
Yes.
That
they steal that, don't they?
They do. And they create this fantasy world around those images. So the child is not free then to develop relationships in a healthy way. So it can also become obsessive. Now that I'm thinking about it, it can become an obsessive thing where the child is stuck on this masturbatory idea of this video that the parents are watching, and they're just stuck there. And rather than develop relationships with people, they're obsessively masturbating, or they're obsessively piling through movies or porn or imagery, and then it detracts them from forming healthy, connected relationships and letting sexuality grow according to age and stage.
Yes, absolutely. And if you look at our world at the moment, I mean, we're seeing the objectification of women by men, but also by women. And we're also seeing the objectification of men by women. There's almost, there seems to be a growing objectification of the two sexes. And I think it's coming out of this, this multi-generational disconnect.
I agree. The less human connection there is, the more objectification there is. Because again, if at some point, unconsciously, consciously, or both, somewhere in there, a child makes a decision that they're only valued for how they look and not who they are, then they're going to pump up the volume on how they look. And that's where they're going to put their attention, because that's where they got the goodies. Okay, so
yes. However, though, that's true for the golden child. I think if there's a scapegoat child, they will have been body shamed. They will have been, demeaned. Made to feel that they don't measure up, that they're not man enough, or you don't fit in with the boys club, or with the girl. You're not like other girls. You're not capable of knowing what to wear, or you just haven't got you're not attractive, or you're not like me, the narcissistic parent who is the cool kid, or the I don't know, the epitome of the man or woman.
So it could split off that way. Also, now what about the system gone wrong, where the mother might feel rejected by the husband because she's aging, and then the daughter's growing more and more beautiful, and she's getting into the puberty stage and growing breasts and becoming shapely, and then the father, because he's objectifying women, starts looking at the daughter in a sexual way, creating jealousy in the mother. And then the theme of emotional incest is where I'm going with all of this. Okay, so let's talk about that so people can really understand what is emotional incest. Is when you become mommy's little husband or daddy's little wife or girlfriend. Okay, it can also be on an emotional level where you become their confidant and their advisor. But I'm talking now about the sexual incest, where there's a level of envy, let's say, by mother to daughter. And I know that's one of your specialties, is mother-daughter disconnect and healing that.
Yes.
That's a big part of it, is when father creates this objectification of the daughter. For example, mother experiences envy, and then mother wants the daughter to fail, or she wants the daughter to not look pretty, or wants to dress the daughter down. And then these forces come into play. So do you see how this can take all shapes and forms?
Yeah, it's true. I think with covert emotional incest, as you're saying, Dr. Judy, it's so different from parentification, which often happens, which is also an objectification. This is more of the child being used as a surrogate spouse.
Exactly.
And that puts, just the word spouse in itself is a sexual relationship. That's what spouses do. So a child being in that role of spouse,
Yes.
is a very precarious role to be in. It's very unsafe for the child, and they know it, that this is there's some kind of unspoken sexual nature to this relationship.
Right, a toxic tie, a sexual toxic tie to one of the parents. And then when the child gets older, they, let's say, try to separate and individuate, but they may even have images of feeling sexual toward their own parents.
Yes, of
and
course, because that's in the air.
That's
and that's not their fault.
Right, and so that they're wondering why they can't make a real significant emotional connection to their girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other. Okay.
Yes.
And that's because that toxicity is running interference, which is exactly, let's bring it full circle back to narcissism. A narcissist wants it to be all about him or herself. So isn't it wonderful for the narcissist to know that the daughter is thinking more about daddy dearest, or the son is thinking about mommy dearest than his own girlfriend? Okay, so again, I'm number one. I'm going to be the number one object of sex. I'm going to be the number one object of everything. And I will run interference so that you don't properly bond to anyone else but me.
You're right. And I think coupled with that, the narcissist sees in his children, he's actually, that what they say, he's also erotic. So he fancies himself.
Yes.
He fancies himself, or she fancies herself, even in the sexual relationship, that it's really a sex with the self. And when there's children in the picture, the narcissist sees their own DNA in the child. So there's naturally, this is my own.
Right.
This is me.
Mirror, like a mini me.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Virtually me.
Don't
it's the greatest kind of celebration of me.
Right. So I'm hoping that the audience is learning some concepts here about emotional incest in a sexual way, and how this all starts and how it's multi-generational. And do you want to add anything to that before we open it up to the audience and invite people?
I mean, only just to sort of say once again, those two types of narcissists, the somatic and the cerebral. When there's more of a cerebral narcissistic parent, that's the intellectual one. The children may pick up on this sense of sort of being belittled for their blossoming sexuality. The wife may be criticized for being lacking in intelligence and being all about her looks and something like that. And the children pick up on this too, that sex is just a perfunctory sort of, like you would wash your hands or, do something like that. It's just, there's no value in it. And that too can have a deeply wounding impact on future relationships.
And if you look around at today's world, we see that sex has become so casualized.
Yeah.
So it loses its meaning when you can keep dropping people and discarding. Okay.
Yes.
Right. It's just again, it's this lack of human connection. So it's real easy to drop a person if you're not really connected to them. And then it's really easy to excuse it by saying, well, they're getting a little saggy. That's why, or they're growing a little bit older. And then what is this giving society a message about? That aging is horrible. It's aging is certainly not sexy. Okay. and because it's all about the skin and the body and being tight and being bright, okay, and glowy and all of that. And so we're sort of we're sort of killing off the possibility of having intimate, connected sexual relationships well into the latter part of our days. Because if we're just
that's right, and
sex, then an old object is worth less than a young object unless you're collecting antiques or wine, right?
I saw a very funny cartoon about that yesterday.
Yeah.
It was about these three sort of aging women in the sea, and one says to the other, swimming's not safe for us at this age because the lifeguards take less notice.
That's great. Okay. And yeah, it's lovely to be beautiful. And I spent a year of my life at Paul Mitchell studio cutting hair, and I love the beauty industry.
Yes.
It's all about looking as good as possible.
I think it's great.
That doesn't mean objectifying other human beings. You can still look beautiful and be beautiful
without objectifying yourself.
Exactly.
Because this is where this is where the healing needs to happen if we've come from a narcissistic family, is that we internalize the narcissist and then we end up objectifying ourselves. So we need to really take stock and say, okay, well, where am I basing my self-worth on keeping up some, unreachable image? And where am I not appreciating myself for my natural beauty, for my uniqueness, for my, all the wonders of my body?
And that's why it's so important from the mind map process system to dismantle I call them the psychoviruses. The viruses or the templates that we soak in from our parents, the messages like I'm only beautiful if I please your eyes, I'm only worth something if my ears are small, I'm only going to be loved if my body is in perfect form. Okay, so these templates, these messages, they ingrain into the psyche. And even when the parents are not there, even if the parents are dead, they keep playing like a broken, what the Freud record, repetition principle. And so this torture chamber has to be dismantled. And the way we dismantle it, and Christiana, of course, is on the team and she does the mind map work as I do and some other members of the staff. It's so important because then really you're living to please this image that your parents ingrained in you, and you're trying to live up to it. And truly it's a torture chamber because they will always pull the rug. It'll never be enough. You'll never be beautiful enough. You'll never be thin enough. You'll never be buff enough. And it's this carrot that they hold out in front of you, and you can never grab the carrot because it's always just a little bit in front of you and unattainable. So I want to open it up to questions. Of course, we can keep on going with our subject. Audience, please feel free to call in. And thank you for this very interesting, in-depth topic. I'm glad that I'm able to bounce these ideas off of you, because it's always much better for me to have somebody to talk to and discuss, because it's more interesting. Christiana, I think of things that I don't, and I think of things that you don't, and then between the two of us, we're just sort of fleshing out the topic, and hopefully the audience is soaking it in and learning something and identifying with it. And that's also part.
And I think just I was thinking about what you were saying just now. You were saying, Dr. Judy, how you never quite attain this image that you're this body image or this exterior image that you're almost groomed to try to attain with a narcissistic parent. You see, the whole thing is based on shame. Really, at the core of this, there's a sort of an underlying shame about sex. There's an underlying shame about the loss of attachment in the family as well. And those two go together.
Sorry to interrupt. We do thank you for that comment. We have a call, so I wanted to take it because we lose the call. So
we've talked a lot.
We talked a lot. Thank you so much for calling in. And hi, you are on air with Christiana and me. And what name would you like me to call by?
You can call me Alan. That's fine. That's my name.
Oh, okay. Hi, Alan.
How are you?
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm good.
Hi, Alan.
You.
Hi. How are you, Christiana?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for calling in.
Sure. So my question is about, and I'm not an expert, of course, on the topic, and I don't want to use it as a flash word. Let me turn down my laptop because I'm sure it's going to give some background noise. And I don't want to just be one of those people who coins the phrase narcissism for every problem that you think your partner has. I'll just tell you what I experienced in my previous relationship, and you can tell me what you think. So I was dating this woman for a little while, and while we were dating, just to keep the story short, she constantly had to have other men that she would flirt with. And it was so excessive. It was the neighborhood barber, or an old ex-boyfriend, or a whole bunch of people who would DM her in Facebook, or a whole bunch of people, in some other social media device. It wound up being like 18 different guys.
Wow.
And it was always these extreme flirtatious type of scenarios where the guys would be like, well, you look really good in your photos or whatever. I'd really love to go out with you. And she'd be telling the guys, yes, we can go out and all these things. She probably would never go out with them, but there would be this constant flirting with them, and this whole idea of one day we're going to meet. And I would always say to her, like, why do you feel you need that? Why is that where you need to go? Like, I understand we all can be in relationships and flirt. That's okay. But it was always these scenarios where she would take it to that extreme with these men. And then it would always be this kind of, the explanation she would give would always be, well, I'm not sexual with them. I never let it go that far. Why are you, acting this way? It's just, it's them. They want me. I don't want them. They are coming after me. But to me, it seemed like this emotional need for this emptiness, which I think is a part of the narcissistic kind of definition. They're looking to take in this positive energy. And again, I don't know anything about narcissism, and I don't claim to be that guy. But I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on it. And then if you had any more questions about what I'm saying, I'd be happy to answer them from my point of view.
Sure. I'll say that as you were speaking, I was thinking about dopamine hits. Every time we get a compliment, every time someone pays attention, there's this dopamine hit. And of course, I'd have to know a lot more about her upbringing, any abandonment issues. Did her father and her mother cheat? These are things for you to think about because, again, the blueprint. And then from your side, I'd want to know if you ever threatened the bond. So in other words, is she just kind of buying herself an insurance policy just in case you drop her? And she wants to make sure that she's still going to be a very visible and viable commodity out there. So these are things to ask yourself, because remember, it's not just her in isolation or you in isolation. It's all of these factors: her background, your background, what you trigger in each other, what's playing out here, your end of the system gone wrong, her end. So one question I have is, so even though it's not emotional cheating, because I did an episode on emotional cheating, and that's usually focused on one other person who gets all the energy, in a way it is. It's just emotionally cheating with a lot of people. So what's in it for you to be in this relationship?
Well,
I'm not saying you should drop the relationship. I'm just wondering if, is it bothering you a lot? And is it something that you want to put a boundary on and say, hey, this, you can do it, but not on my time, or not with me, or, you choose.
Yeah. Okay. I'm so glad you asked me that, Dr. Judy. So I did leave the relationship as a result of one of these scenarios where she was telling me she was taking work trips, and she was seeing one of the guys on these work trips. I come to find out. And the part of it that was a deal breaker for me was I didn't know anything about it. It was the dishonesty of pretending to be somewhere for work while also seeing other people. It was going back to your ex for these. I didn't know anything about it, and I think that component of not being honest was a huge problem for me. I did see your episode, Dr. Judy, on emotional cheating, and I was really interested by how you defined it as it really being where the person is more invested emotionally in this new person than they are in their already existing relationship.
Absolutely.
I really wanted to understand why it needs to be, and I know we don't have all the time in the world for it, but why does it need to be to that extreme for it to be considered emotional cheating? If your partner doesn't know what you're doing, if you're not being honest about these extracurricular activities, isn't that enough?
If you're not being honest about these extracurricular activities, then you may be in an exclusive relationship, but your partner's not in an exclusive relationship. And it doesn't only involve sex. It could be emotions, and it could be multiple partners. But the bottom line is, does it work for you? Aren't you invested in the person? And that's a big part of my definition of narcissism, where you're bleeding out. You're giving. The other person is taking. And it's robbing light out of the relationship. There's no synergy. So in my video, I added a line which I'll share with you because it's right there on the tip of my tongue. And it says something about when the feelings don't flow both ways, when it's a one-way street of love and investment, you're really on a pathway to hell.
Right.
And
so it
also
didn't work.
Sounds.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It also
Christina.
It sounds like sometimes the female narcissistic type will have one partner who's sort of like the stable one that they can return to, and then with that partner, then they're able to go off and have all these others, but they keep this partner as their sort of, it's like a security thing. They're not really investing in you, but they just keep you there as a sort of rock amidst the chaos of their sort of liaisons with others.
Honestly, Christina, that is how I felt. I felt like I was the safety blanket, and while she had that blanket, she would go out and talk to these other men and flirt with these other men. And with the guy who she was going to go see physically, she insists nothing sexually ever happened. But I was like, with that particular guy, we sat down, we talked, we agreed that that relationship needed to end. You know, she agreed, we agreed. I didn't force her.
Mm-hmm.
But then 2 weeks later, she went right back to the guy. And when I asked her about it, she just said, well, he reached out to me. I didn't really want to talk to him. It was him pursuing me. And it was always all of these excuses and explanations that took the blame off of her for her behavior. It was this guy wanted me, or we went to group therapy. The therapist told us to take a break. So while I was on a break from you, Alan, I found a bunch of other people. I didn't want to do it. The therapist told us to take a break. It was always all of these different scenarios and excuses and explanations. And it just drove me crazy. I was like, I'm so tired.
You know what, Alan? Keep it simple. You don't have to psychoanalyze it past, this doesn't work for me. Doesn't feel good. These are my boundaries. And if you can't respect my boundaries, I think that we should either seek help and get the boundaries straight. You know, I love when people fix things internally rather than just run and leave. That's my preference. And if that can't be done, then there's just no point in you trying to shape her behavior, spy on her behavior. Not that I'm saying that you spied on her behavior, but you know, that's what it leads to, is all this suspiciousness and checking the cell phone and checking social media. And who wants to live like that? Because a foundation of a relationship is trust. Okay, so if she was unhappy with the relationship, then have the guts to say, hey, look, I'm not happy with this, that, and that. Let's work on it. And if you can't work on it, I'm starving to death here, or I'm too angry, or something. So I think relationships require that level of feedback and honesty, because then how else do you know how to be in the relationship and make an attempt at satisfying your partner? Okay, so
I completely agree.
Right. So again, you know, lesson learned. Next time, read the hieroglyphics on the wall. Okay. Symptoms are hieroglyphics that point to the cause. So if you see symptom after symptom of needing mirroring and attunement from all of these different people, then you can know that maybe something happened to her on a causal level, that she can have healthy attachment, that she didn't have enough narcissistic supply, she didn't do her internal work, and now she's behaving at this arrested, you know, almost sounds like a teenager, like, wow, look how many people, you know, liked me on Facebook. And right. So you don't have to look past the fact that it just doesn't work for you. So take seriously these signs.
Well, I did want to. I appreciate that, and me, you know, really defining what works for me and what doesn't. But I also did want to understand a bit more about how you, because you're the expert, you've been doing it for many years, as you said in that episode, how you really surmise that emotional cheating works in a scenario where the person is more invested in the person that they're cheating with than their spouse or their current partner, as a definition of emotional cheating. I did want to understand that a little bit more.
Okay. So the way I see it is that when the other person starts complaining that they're just not being made important enough to be number one, when there are texts coming in the middle of the night, or even several times a day, when the couple's on vacation and communication is being made to another person, that's just not okay. That's a real boundary violation. Okay. And so, so where the tipping point is, you know, how I said it in that particular episode, which unfortunately I had so many technical difficulties with. Do you think I should do that again, or was it understandable?
Yes, I think you should. I think you should expound on that episode again, because it had me very interested. in learning more about it, especially in
Okay.
relationship to what I went through.
Okay, I'm going to do that again. And just to finish answering the question, the tipping point is, and you could feel this energetically. You could feel, you know, you don't have to be a psychoanalyst or, you know, or a psychologist or a mental health expert. You could feel it in your gut. Something just tells you that something's not okay. That person isn't really that invested in you, and they're spending way too much time and energy in discussing their personal problems with this other person, and probably even complaining about you. Okay, so so if that's the case, then the relationship is leaking. You see what I'm saying? It's leaking. It's not sealed. Okay, relationship on some level has to be hermetically sealed. You can't let psychoviruses in there. You can't let people come in there and destroy the bond, because again, if that gets in there, then it starts chipping away at the light of your relationship, and then energetically you can feel it, and then it's time to confront
Alan,
it.
I might just add in a little of my little 2p's worth here. You know, it does sound like she has some kind of love addiction, and you know, the thing about love addicts is they're in love with the feeling of being in love, with the honeymoon period, and they go out seeking that honeymoon period. And of course, in a long-term relationship, that doesn't last. But they need that hit, they need that fix of being in love with somebody in order to emotionally regulate. So it sounds like she may be just driven by this need to be in love and have attention and be loved. And of course, that may have fizzled with you because you're in a longer term relationship, as it would. Anyway.
Yeah, that I could say that you're spot on with that. And I'll just close with this to close out how things ended. And this kind of leads me more to the narcissistic, you know, topic that we're on. So when I did break up with her, I didn't decide to get into a new relationship with anyone, but I was going out on dates. There was one particular weekend that I was out of town, and I asked her to return my key during that time while I was out of town. She had a few things at my place, and I asked her to pick those things up. Well, she came over my place. She logged into my social media account. She changed the passwords and logged in. She found out that I was dating someone, contacted the woman, told the woman she's still my girlfriend, to get the woman, you know, to go away. And you know, she sent out other messages in my social media to, you know, I guess, move any potential threats, I guess, to her. And I just saw it as so odd because it made me feel like I was being objectified. When we were together, she never was really invested and connected in a relationship. It didn't feel like. But when I took myself away, or the thing that she wanted from me away, she was trying to figure out ways to stop me from moving on. And it was so odd because when I was with her, she had it. She just she wasn't nurturing the relationship from her end enough for me to stay. And then when I left, it was panic mode and try by all means to tell any woman that he's, you know, potentially dating that I'm still his girlfriend. And the oddity of it was, you know, you had me, you could, but you didn't want that. You just want whatever it is that I represent or I'm giving you. And it seems like that for me is that narcissistic supply. Again, I'm, you know, no expert on narcissistic supply, but that's what it led me to.
And going back to what Christiana said earlier, she didn't want her base ruined. You know how it's always better to go hunting and fishing when you have a home to come to. Okay, so you were her home base, so she didn't want that threatened. So even though she couldn't commit to being exclusive in the relationship, emotionally exclusive, she still wanted to secure her home base. So, maybe I don't want you 100%, but I know for sure I don't want you to have anybody else. So that's what I'm going to make sure that I ruin.
And of course, she, it would be a rejection, you leaving her, and that's something that she can't handle, is a rejection of any man, towards her, so even if she doesn't want to be in the relationship.
Yeah, I could see that.
You can see that. Okay, so I know we're almost out of time, but just to come full circle back to the topic of sexuality and how it's
the sexualization.
Right, the sexualization. So who knows what her blueprint is, but if I had to reconstruct something out of it, I would say that there were boundary violations in her family. And what was important was the objectification of people, and she probably didn't have a role model of parents that really got down and into the relationship and connected appropriately and worked things through. And that's why you see this kind of behavior, because something goes off on the causal level. And you probably know more about her background. Of course you do, because you were with her, than we do. So you can even start thinking about that, so that you can just kind of you can do a little mind mapping if you want. It's always interesting to mind map it in hindsight and say, oh, no wonder it turned out this way. Her parents cheated, and her parents did this also, and her parents didn't really connect with her. So I just want to leave you with that, because it's not random, and that's why it's so important for people to do the work. Because if they don't do this inside job work and identify lies and patterns and the what the Freuds and so on, then they're doomed to repeat it, and then other people get hurt, and relationships don't progress, and then there's no foundation to build family upon. So now that you're learning this stuff and you're interested, whatever you have to do as a human being to be the best human being you can, so that you're the best role model for your children, this is a great time for you to take that time and just look at yourself and see if there's anything there that you need to
Alan, I was going to ask you, I wonder this woman, who she reminds you of. Which woman from your early days perhaps does she remind you of? Was there an inconsistent person in
my own therapy sessions, what we found is the tie to that relationship and others I've had to my upbringing and my parents. My parents were emotionally unavailable. Still are to this day.
Okay, so
and I was very used to her emotional unavailability. I would blame myself when my parents did it to me.
Okay,
yeah. So I would blame myself when she. Go ahead, Dr. Judy.
I was just going to say, because I know we're almost out of time, there's your work, is to look at your what the Freuds, the repeat patterns, which was a great question that Christiana concluded with. Okay, so look at what you're doing to repeat it, see what kind of negative core beliefs they instilled in you, unravel all the garbage. Of course, feel free to reach out to us. And if you don't already have it, get a copy of my book, Be the Cause: Healing Human Disconnect. And if you guys listening like this material, subscribe to the channel, get your free consultation if you would like. And then I also have my basic mind map psychoeducational video, the 9-panel mind map journey to healing. And then again, I'm coming out with the healing from narcissistic abuse in-depth one. Hopefully will be done in a few months' time. But, you know, we're always learning, and the key is to learn and not repeat. Okay, so I leave you with that. Thank you so much for calling in. And Christiana, thank you
so much, Dr. Judy and Christiana. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Alan.
My pleasure. And Christiana, we'll be back in a couple of weeks to do our next episode. And in the meantime, I hope everyone is getting a psychoeducation, and do read the book. And if you don't want to do the therapy, at least learn the system. And the video really, really helps. The 9-panel mind map video series is just a really cool breakdown of me standing.
Be a good Christmas present.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
For yourself or for others.
So yeah, pay it forward, okay? And we'll see each other again back on the show. Christiana, thank you very much for tuning in. And again, thank you for being a stimulating therapist and interfacing.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Good night, everyone.